Hello, this is Ellen Diaz and you're watching the E-volve show. Today we're going to be talking about self-care. And for that reason, we have a women's health expert and her name is Rachel Redmond. Rachel is a doctor of Oriental medicine, a Ayurvedic practitioner, and women's health expert. She teaches her clients how to apply the ancient wisdom of Eastern medicine traditions to the challenges posed by our hectic modern lives. Hi, Rachel. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's a total pleasure. Thank you so much for being here. As we were talking before recording, it's like a surprise, no surprise, like a great surprise that a lot of you guys have jumped in and want to participate in our E-volve interviews. So here we are. Do you want to start talking a little bit about who you are and what you do in your business?
Sure, I'd love to. So, hi everyone. I'm Rachel. I'm based out of Michigan, in the U.S., and I am a doctor of Oriental medicine and an Ayurvedic practitioner, and I'm also a soon-to-be certified neuroscience-based coach. So I'm really taking this ancient medicine and integrating it with modern neuroscience. So it's this really fascinating blend. I think so. I love to study, so I like to learn.
Wow, that's beautiful.
Yeah, and I work with people, mainly women, and I've changed my business over the past year because I used to do acupuncture in person, but now I'm changed to 100% virtual. So I've transitioned more into health coaching model, and also I have a group program that I run a couple times a year. So, but generally I help women improve their health and manage stress. But I feel like as it's evolved over the years, it's really becoming like really giving women the permission that they're after to slow down and to rest and to really listen and tune into that inner knowing, that voice inside of them that really has the answers for their life. So that's kind of where it's morphing, because that's what the need is really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I love this conversation because it's like a different thing because not everybody do like a Oriental medicine and all these things. So I think it's gonna be super interesting. So how all of this is started for you, Rachel? Like you always loved like the Oriental medicine, or like it was something like suddenly you start learning about how all of this come up for you?
Yeah, so as with many people, it started with my own health issues and challenges. As a kid, I had chronic digestive issues and undiagnosed anxiety. And as I got through my teen years and then I went to college, it just got worse and worse and worse. And I went the Western medicine route and was given some medicine to help with my digestive symptoms. But when I asked the doctor, how long should I take this for? He said, oh, you can take it the rest of your life. And I was thinking like I'm 19, I'm like relatively healthy. I just had this inner knowing, this sense that there was something deeper going on and I wanted to resolve it. So while I took the medicine for a while and I was grateful just to have some relief of my symptoms, I just got lucky and learned there was an Ayurvedic practitioner in my town. And Ayurveda, for anyone who doesn't know, is an ancient system of medicine that comes from India. And it's thousands of years old, and it's a truly holistic system of medicine because it takes into account the body, the mind, and the spirit. So I didn't know any of this, but I was just open and interested and young at 19. And I learned about Ayurveda and I learned how to meditate, and my whole life started to transform. I like 80% of my digestive issues and my food intolerances went away. And I learned to manage this underlying anxiety that was really coming from unprocessed emotions and not really having great coping skills. So that was almost, I'm 37, so that was almost 20 years ago now. And I just, through my 20s, kept studying. Then I went to acupuncture school, and then I've just kind of been working and learning, and then we'll, pick up something new along the way.
That's great. And then this year you make it everything online. So it's just beautiful. So we can all have all that knowledge that you have that maybe before it was more like in a one-on-one.
Yes.
situation, now we can reach everybody around the world.
Yeah.
So it's just beautiful how these things are working these days, right?
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah. Yeah, it worked out. I had already created an online program before COVID. And then I was like, all right, well, this is my
This
opportunity
is
to
it.
go with it. So I did. I made the leap. And it was a good one.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And then I was reading on your website, like one of the things like we're dealing nowadays is kind of like women, we're like hustling and rush and like stress. Like, how do you see this society affecting women, especially?
Yeah. So yeah, I think we're all under a lot of pressure. I just think more and more and more these days of, being productive and getting all the to-dos done. And I just started to think like, how I just started to feel like it's impossible to get all the things done and to stay on top. And there's just always this feeling of overwhelm. And when my son, I have a 3-year-old, and when he was a baby, that was when that feeling like really came up for me. And then I started to think like, I'm trying to find balance, quote unquote, but we live in a really imbalanced world. We live in a world, and I'll kind of share with you some of the perspective that I have from Eastern medicine, the yin and the yang. So I'll just take a look into why we're so imbalanced. And so for anyone, you've probably seen the yin yang symbol, that white symbol with the black and the white. But we live in a world that values and prioritizes doing and being productive and getting things done and high energy and being excited and just fast, and all of that's well and good because we all want to be productive, we want to be fulfilled, we want to fuel our passions. But what's happened is that those qualities are associated with yang, with the masculine energy. And what's happened is we've devalued the yin energy, that feminine energy, that which is associated with rest and stillness and slowness and heaviness and receptivity. And those things kind of they're like not quite as desirable, to slow down versus like being super productive. Mm-hmm. And what's happened is that imbalance has really affected our own well-being, and specifically women, because we have more yin nature. Our hormones like estrogen have more of this yin nature, and so it's really taken a toll on us and just created more and more and more stress, which really just depletes our yin, and it's creating more illness. It's making us age faster. We're feeling exhausted and depleted. There's like a lot of hormonal issues. So I'm just seeing all of this happen. And I was like, okay, well, if we're trying to find health in an unhealthy world, then our model of health isn't actually healthy. Yeah. So we have to kind of shift the paradigm and start to realize that balance and harmony and health and wholeness has to do with this yin and the yang. And when we can value those two forces equally, then we find health, then we find healing, then we find harmony. And that's when our lives can really feel like they're not missing anything. We're not trying to get somewhere all the time, trying to, get the next thing off our to-do list. So that's really the perspective that I bring to this work that I do.
Yeah, it's so interesting because it's true. Like sometimes we get into that like more masculine energy, and it's what you were saying. It's like the society that we are around nowadays. Like it feels like it's a little bit like that. So what are some things that you see on your clients when they come to see you? Like, for example, like that's another thing. Like sometimes we don't even know we need some rest, or that we need some support from people like you, Rachel, that has all this knowledge and that can support us to have a better life. So what are some things that you see on your clients?
Yeah, so I mean, I started to see a pattern of symptoms, and they can be very general, things like fatigue or exhaustion or insomnia, a lot of digestive issues like bloating or constipation, and then we get into some of the hormonal issues like really bad PMS or painful periods or infertility or struggles with that. And then what I see is that, some women, they just can get by. Like they're like, like I'm okay. It's not that big of a deal. But then you fast forward, a decade or two. And then I've worked with a lot of women going through that menopausal shift. And it's like, if you've pushed through, pushed your body to the max, haven't recharged your batteries, haven't slowed down at all, when you get to that moment, oftentimes it's like the point of no return. Like there's just the symptoms of menopause can be all consuming and debilitating, and we can prevent so much of that hormonal shift that happens later in life, but we only can prevent it by what we do now, ahead of the game. So it's all about, longevity and looking at the long view. And so people don't always know because they're not trained in this, medicine, or they don't know, but they just think, my mom had terrible menopause, I'm doomed to it myself. But what we do now and the balance we keep now is what kind of sets up the stage for our future and our health long term. So it really is important that we figure it out sooner rather than later, because it's just gonna, kind of keep getting harder.
Going, yeah. And one of those things, like it feels like before is what you mentioned with your doctor, like they give you a medicine and you're like, okay, there was no other options. I mean, there were options, but they were not as popular, or people didn't know that much, or we didn't have internet or things like
Right.
that, or coaches or people who have learned all of this during years, so we didn't have that access to different options. But nowadays I feel like it's just very valuable, all the work that you guys do, because it brings that knowledge and that other options that before didn't really exist
Right.
for the regular people.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we know so much now, but then also the flip side is that we can get so overwhelmed by all of the information and the diets and the this and the that. So I love ancient medicine, Ayurveda, and Chinese medicine because it just brings it back to the basics. What is most essential? What is most important? And it sort of gets rid of all the fluff, and it's thousands of years old. So it's we can rely on it.
Yeah, totally. It's not something new that they don't know. Like it's been proved for a
Right.
long time.
Yeah.
That's so beautiful. And then, so what are the some things that you like, some tips or some suggestions for the people who are watching today? Like, what is your approach with this Oriental medicine or the Ayurvedic?
Mhm. Yeah, so I would say the first thing is we really have to look at the stress in our life. And I would say most people have a significant amount of stress given our collective past year. And so then it's not a matter of how much stress, but it's how well we manage it. It's how do we have the tools to cope with the changes of life and the unknowns and the uncertainties. And if anyone watching is struggles with self-care or taking time for themselves, I like to help people take this idea of productivity and just sort of expand it to include both like the yin aspect and the yang aspect. So we think of productivity as like, getting things done, getting work accomplished, getting a workout in, cleaning up the house, those things are productive. But when you expand the definition to include the yin side of things, it means that sleeping is productive. And you know, um, spending time like cooking a nourishing meal is productive, and sitting on the couch and zoning out and looking out at the clouds is productive. And yesterday I was laying in the hammock with my son, and I was just thinking like, wow, this is like the most productive thing I could be doing, is just spending this quality moment and really being conscious in the moment and really being present in that moment. And I thought, oh wow, how productive, how yin and beautiful is that? Because also that is what charges me up, that is what nourishes me and then supports me to give me the energy to then go do all the things that I have to do or need to do, like paying the bills and doing the laundry and like all those those things. So that's where this idea that productivity, it can be effortless, but we have to come from a place of deeper nourishment, of deeper connection with ourselves. And when we do that, then the cycle of nature, of yin and yang, it just flows. We can get into the flow of our life rather than trying to like fight against it all the time. So that's one, is like really expand your definition of productivity and start to include those kind of non-essential things that really are essential, and maybe define those for yourself, because for someone it's going to be, you know, for someone it might be something very different than what it might be for me. So we get to decide, you know, what is nourishing and productive for ourselves. And I have more. Do you want more, or like?
Of course, yeah,
okay.
We want everything.
Okay, good. So, and then another thing that I try to talk with a lot in the women in my program is this idea that we can simplify our self-care, and that the way to do that is really get back to basics of our health. Like, you know, self-care can be drinking enough water during the day. Self-care can be going to bed at a decent time so that we have the possibility to sleep, you know, 7 or 8 hours at night. Self-care can be as simple as making sure you're eating lunch, you know, like sitting down, having a meal, not necessarily powering through that, you know, through work, or eating, you know, at the computer. Because what that does is we can't digest food if we're in that rushing around mode or in that stress mode. And even if you're eating the healthiest thing in the world, if you're rushing and distracted and busy, you're not going to digest it well. And then you're not going to feel well, and you're not going to have energy. And then you're just setting the stage for future illness and just more symptoms. So when you get back to the basics and remember that these things are valuable, that taking some time to eat lunch, to maybe take a few minutes after lunch to lay down or take a walk, or, you know, do something, you know, non-work related, that this is what will help you get back into the zone, you know, in a few minutes. So it's not time lost. We have to, it's like quality over quantity sometimes.
Yeah, it's so interesting, because it's true. Like sometimes, like, it's what you say, like, I didn't think about it, but when people are talking about self-care, you kind of like think about like, oh, I'll go to the spa, or I do this and do that. So it's kind of like a different way to do it. But really, like what you mentioned is like in your day a day, there is so many self-care things that you can do for yourself. Like just what you mentioned, like just eating not in front of the computer, because I feel like I do that, you know, I'm like, oh, I'm eating so healthy or whatever, but I'm like in a rush doing things and eating, and then I continue doing something else. So it's like very valuable to just like what you say, like just stop, eat, and take your time.
Yes, and then go, and then you'll get more, you'll probably be more focused, because we, as much as we think we can multitask effectively, we can't fully. Like our brains, it takes us longer to transition from this activity to that activity. And one thing I just want to add on to that self-care piece is that, again, you can look at self-care through the lens of yin and yang. So I see yang self-care as, yang is external. And so that's kind of what we think of self-care as, like things that require time, money, energy, planning, like getting a massage or going out, doing something, getting your nails done. That's kind of what I call the external self-care. And all of that is well and good. But unfortunately, this pandemic has really like stripped a lot of that away from us. We weren't able to go out and do those things. So then what we can do is learn that there's something internal self-care. That's more from the yin perspective. Internal self-care is effortless. It requires no time, money, or planning. So internal self-care is as simple as being mindful, as observing your thoughts, as noticing how you feel, as, you know, looking at a bird in the tree for a few minutes and just being really present in that moment. Internal self-care can be so simple, but and it doesn't require that time, energy, or money, and it often is that which nourishes us the most. So that's kind of, you know, breaking it up and seeing it through this dual lens.
Yeah, that's so like so cool, because I think like a lot of those things like we don't realize that they are actually in our hands in the day a
Mhm.
day. They're like habits
Yes.
we need to change or things that we can do, like little actions that we can do every single day.
Yes. And it is those little actions every day that have the biggest payoff, later down the years. So it's like that 20 minutes more of sleep. It's like drinking water throughout the day. It's like those little moments are what, moves the needle in terms of our health.
Yeah. And I feel like those things too, like a lot of times we talk about them, but then why is it so hard to do
Yes.
them? Like
Yes.
even like drinking water for me, it's like it's so hard. Like I pass days and I don't drink any water, and then I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, I have to do this. I have to do this. I know it's good for me, but even
Yes.
that, like, that's why it's so important sometimes to have people like you just supporting your clients, being there, being accountable, because then people actually go through the things that they need to do to get better.
Yeah. And we've really lost, the more, technology is great, but it also has its downfalls. And we've just often gotten more and more disconnected from the rhythms of nature, from those cues of nature. And that really, we respond to the sun and the dark, the light and the dark of the day. Like we are these creatures of nature as well. And when we get too far away from being in touch with that, that's when we lose those rhythms and forget, those, drinking water and things like that. So we have to, at this point, kind of repattern our minds and reshape our habits. And it takes a little bit of energy up front, but once you do it and you kind of create a new groove in the brain, then it becomes easy. And that's when self-care becomes stress-free. And that's what I try to help my clients with, because I am a busy mom. I'm working. We don't have childcare anymore because of COVID, like all these things. And I'm able to, my self care is very minimal some days, but it's like it's just built into my life. I don't think about it. Like I get the basics in, and then some days I have more time to do some extra things that really help. But the baseline, it's like built into my life. It's a habit. It's a reflex. It takes no mental energy.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's like super important, I guess, like getting into the habit to change things. So, Rachel, do you want to tell us a little bit about the freebie you have for all of you guys who are watching today?
Yes, I'd love to. So I created a free masterclass, and this is really so after working with women for over 10 years, I start to see all these gaps in our knowledge, kind of what the modern woman doesn't really know, but the things that I've learned that I'm like, oh, all women need to know these things because it really helps. And so I created a class. I think it's 50 minutes, and you can download it. It's things about how to simplify self-care, how to reduce stress, and how to improve your health. And really, everything is simple and easy. And so you could start with one idea or, an add-on. So that's what I have for you today. And I'm really excited about it. It was really fun to put it together.
Nice. So, how people can contact you or connect with you, Rachel?
Yeah, so I have a website, and it's rachel-redmond.com. And I'm also on Instagram and Facebook. So Instagram, I'm at rachel.e.redmond. And Facebook, hopefully you'll just find me if you
That's
Google
great.
me. Yeah.
Perfect. And then I was like seeing on your website too, like you have an online course too. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that? Like if anybody is curious about like learning more about that?
Yeah. So I generally do it's called the Yin Way. It's like paving this path for the Yin, and a group program with women. And we're just finishing up the my most recent round. But so I'm not exactly sure when I'm going to run it again. Probably not till the fall. But in the meantime, I offer private one-on-one coaching with women, and they get the access to the course so that they can get those foundational tools. And this is really, I created it based on what women were coming to me and what I kept telling them over and over the same things. I was kept saying the same things. And I was like, okay, well then I'm just going to put this in this, put it all together. And so we cover topics like learning your individual constitution. What is your mind body type? So that you can understand more of your own nature and learn to create balance for yourself, not anybody else, because we all need different things. And we cover modules on stress and hormones and food as medicine and all these wonderful things. So that's what I'm offering right now.
Beautiful. So I hope you guys can check it out and look into Rachel's website and all the information that she has. So Rachel, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you for having me. It was great talking to you.